1 minute. Thank you so much for joining us today. We're first going to get started with introductions of our speaker. Our speaker today is Jack Reeder. Jack Reeder works for Verizon Enterprise Solutions in the Boston, Massachusetts area. Jack, I'll tell you a little bit about him today. Jack's an accomplished secure access service edge, also known as SASE, business partner, architect, and Internet of Things trailblazer. Accomplished in cloud security, IoT, he's an IoT thought leader, innovator, and business development strategist. Like I said before, currently works for Verizon Enterprise Solutions. Previously was an innovator and business development strategist at Cisco, IBM, Optimum Energy, ThingWorks, and like I said, currently at Verizon is recognized for spearheading highly complex programs and solutions through industry-leading investments and partnerships to accelerate early-stage revenue and top-line growth. Jack's market expertise includes clean tech energy management, intelligent buildings, factory automation, smart grid, and wearable computing. He's also recognized for his consulting and systems integration background in finance, healthcare, manufacturing, energy, and real estate development. And today, Jack is going to talk to us broadly about cybersecurity and hone in specifically on ransomware attacks. We will have time at the end of the presentation for questions, and feel free to enter any questions into the chat box so we can get to them at the end of the session. As you can see here, Jack earned his Bachelor's of Science from Towson University in Business Administration and a certificate of completion from UCLA in Data Communications, Systems Analysis, and Information Technology. Jack is now going to share his screen with us.
That.
That is great. Thanks, Jack.
Anything else, Sarah, or should we dive in?
Jack, I can't see your screen now. I can only see mine.
Try it again. About that.
That's great.
Yay. Anything else? Any other announcements, Sarah, or should we dive in?
No, sir. Please dive in.
Well, thank you, Sarah. Thanks for that introduction, and it's great to be with everyone today. I'm humbled to be with the Agribusiness School and with all of you and the experiences that you bring to our discussion today. Sarah asked me to spend a little bit of time on cybersecurity, cyber threat warfare, and this current topic of ransomware, and help explain and help simplify what ransomware is for some of you. I think what you'll find in my slide deck for some of you that are more advanced are some interesting pointers about where to go for more information and how to think differently about ransomware. And for those of you that are still getting familiar with what ransomware is and where to go for help and whether it applies to you or not, I think you'll find some interesting information as well. I've got about 30 minutes of slides, if that's okay, Sarah. And then I thought we could open it up for some discussion because ransomware is the most current topic given the conflict in the Ukraine and Russian cyber warfare that's going on exactly today. For those of you that are following along in the news, you may have heard that there are threats from the Russian Federal Cyber Warfare Center in Russia to attack the United States explicitly today or tomorrow if we take any action with regard to the Ukraine. And ransomware is front and center. There have been additionally specific ransomware source code leaks where it is now possible through the internet to download ransomware source code and launch source code attacks, ransomware attacks using this source code. Just as of yesterday, these are linked back to Russian GRU, cyber actors, bad actors, state actors, and so it's pretty good timing to talk about ransomware itself. And anyway, it's a growing trend. So yeah, let me take a minute and just make sure we're all clear on what ransomware is. And I think there's maybe a little confusion because it's not simply a type of malware, but in a compound fashion, it's a type of malware that can be used to lock a device. And we are also seeing that this malware not only locks devices, but it subsequently exposes the data in public settings, which is sort of the triple threat. Introducing malware, which means they've broken in, locking your system, if that's not enough, and then exposing all of your private data. You couldn't ask for a more serious threat, and therefore, a type of breach that requires extra attention. The kind of attention, for those of you, this is sort of a lunch and learn. This is actually the last slide in the deck, but I thought I would move it to the front in case you have other things to do at lunchtime, or if you just want to get to the punchline. Sometimes it's easier just to go to okay, what's the action plan? What can I do about it? And then I'll go into a little bit more about ransomware itself and some research and how to think about it as a problem. But I thought I would move this slide up. And so this is, if you will, a simplified checklist of what you can do about ransomware, what you ought to be doing to keep intruders out in the first place. The best offense for ransomware is a good defense that simply keeps people out and makes it more difficult for them to introduce malware into your systems than it is somebody else or anybody else. And to practice reasonable security hygiene, and as just a way to really a reminder for all of us of what is good hygiene in protecting our systems, our company systems, and our own assets, and how to remain vigilant. So let me just run through these real quick, and then we'll get back on track. But everyone should take seriously doing regular backups. If you are faced with a ransomware attack, of course, the data would be locked up. You would not have access to that data, which could be mission critical data, and having a good backup that's kept off site and that's reasonably current and having a recovery plan and testing it. These are all nothing new for people here, but really just a reminder to do backups. If you have an auto backup capability on your PC or your servers, I would recommend that, and of course, keeping all of that off-site. Focusing on mobile phones. Some of the research that we'll go over in the next few minutes is exposing the fact that cyber attacks are especially prone for mobile devices. Why is that? Because it's very hard to understand the malware that's being introduced when you're staring at a screen that's 3 inches by 4 inches. And it's very common for all of us to click on attachments from our mobile phone. And that's when bad things happen. And if you can, try and avoid clicking on attachments and wait until you're back at your PC. If you're not sure, if you're just not sure about who the email is from, or the text, or an announcement from someone you don't know, don't click on it, please. Don't wait until you're back at your PC. That's, better safe than sorry. So mobile phones are especially prone these days. A lot of companies at Verizon, we notice, are adding an email banner to messages coming from outside your organization. This is something we can talk about later, but I'm starting to receive emails from colleagues at partner companies where it clearly states at the top of the email that the email is from an outside party, and you should take care that it's somebody you know. And so banners are an easy way, especially on mobile phones, to see that it's a message coming from outside your organization or from somebody you know. So banners are good. A lot of attention being paid to what's called multi-factor authentication, making sure that when your users log in, or when you log in, that you take advantage of having a cell phone and a PC near you, so that you can have a text code sent and you're using strong password phrases where possible. So that is all sort of good hygiene. Again, nothing new for everyone here, really just a reminder list. Making sure antivirus and malware software is turned on and up to date. Okay, I think everybody understands that. Develop a list of priority files and databases to back up more frequently. This is something that I've done recently, which is creating a top 10 list of files, and I do that every quarter. It's not every day, but at least it helps me mentally prepare for what are the data files and databases and data stores that I can't live without, and if they were to be locked up, how do I make sure I can get to them more frequently? Patching products. Okay, yep. Use application and website control, whitelisting and blacklisting. This gets to firewalls and IDS, IPS prevention systems. If you're not doing application and website URL filtering and control, let's talk about that a little bit more as well. Segmenting networks is something that our friends in our network teams preach every day, how to ensure that if someone does attack your network or does encrypt your files, they're only on part of your network. They're not gaining access to your entire network, east to west, as they say, and all of your data files that are stored anywhere on your network, but rather only part of your network. And that's important. And the rest of these I'll leave for you to go through. But again, this is kind of a checklist. It's not perfect. It's not absolutely complete. But, I thought it would be good just to remind ourselves right up front, what are the things that we could or should be doing. So let's look at the big picture. I like to start by using the analogy that we all live in one big cyber neighborhood. If you think of all these homes as you and me and all of the companies and all of the federal agencies and all of the different industries, however you'd like to slice and dice our private and public economy, you can think of it as a neighborhood, one big cyber neighborhood. And for those of you that maybe haven't taken a deep course in how the internet works, each of these houses and the internet itself is based on what are called public IP addresses, much like the addresses in a neighborhood, where each house, in order for mail to be delivered uniquely to your house, has a unique public IP address. Some companies and some individuals have multiple addresses, but in the end, it boils down to this concept of addressing. And it is fundamental to cybersecurity, fundamental to networking, and to how we protect our homes when it comes to ransomware. You can think of each home and your home or your computer really as a house, much like the house that you live in a neighborhood, where there are at any point in time bad actors and individuals who are trying to break in and do bad things. And your job, our job, is to protect your house and don't make yourself an easy target. And so I'm using this picture here from a physical security perspective and applying it to cybersecurity to say it's virtually the same idea. We need a way to prevent, detect, and then respond with a set of sensors, if you will, and a set of indicators and a set of plans or a set of responses if someone were to break in. And to think about your servers, your computers, your storage equipment, and your cloud systems, we'll get to the cloud and cloud systems as well, as really assets that live in a house. And the perimeter around the house is your cybersecurity defense. So how do we combine and recombine different tools to create a solid perimeter that keeps people out before bad things happen? So nothing sophisticated there. It's a good metaphor that I think works as we get deeper into ransomware. And so again, our objective is to not make ourselves an easy target. If you see the picture on the right, attackers, and we know this from research, are more likely to attack and be successful with computer systems where it's easier to break in. If it's hard to break in, they move on. And so there are some IP addresses that are easy to understand and find and to compromise, and then there are some that aren't. So our job is to not allow easy wins. It's important to remember that this is not personal. They're really not after each of you and I, each of us as individuals in particular, although they may be, which is a different situation again. But mostly these are bad actors and state-sponsored cyber warfare agencies who are going through a phone book, an old phone book with hundreds and thousands and millions of names as fast as they can, looking for easy wins. And when they find one that they can get in, and they've targeted who they think they can get in to some extent, then they can do bad things. And so when it comes to protecting against, let's call those standard commercial attacks, each of us is a player in this sort of security-based arms race. There is a separate set of attacks that are state-sponsored by North Korea and Iran and Russia and other players in the security arms race. And they've targeted a particular type of residents, and they're looking for specific military or commercial assets and data. They know what they're looking for. And that's a level of protection and detection that's a bit higher than just standard commercial hackers. And it requires an additional investment to know exactly which assets you think are targeted. And in some cases, you can proactively do dark web hunting and go try and find the attackers using what are called honeypots and other mechanisms to proactively know when you're going to be attacked before you're actually attacked. And the goal is the same. The goal is to raise the cost of doing business for them as attackers. So don't make yourself an easy target. If we do good prevention, then we save a lot of energy on the detection, the response, and the remediation. Let's talk about research for a minute. So we do research at Verizon on cyber warfare. There is a lot of research done in the industry. There are hundreds and thousands of companies from CrowdStrike to industry analysts like Gartner Group and Forrester. There are publications in the media like Security Week. We have our U.S. government, Department of Homeland Security, that does research on who are these actors, how are they attacking, what are the vulnerabilities, can we catalog those vulnerabilities, and how do we help people prevent from being attacked. At Verizon, we manage one of the largest networks in the world, just to remind everyone of the breadth of our business. And we have research, and it's a lot of it is free. I want to show you some of the results on ransomware from some of our recent research from Verizon. I'd like to just pause and remind everyone that it does boil down on some level to fiber optics and satellite transmission. When you ask the question, how do Russian cyber warfare and attackers get access to servers in Kansas City or in Chicago or in Minneapolis, it's the same fiber optic media that the traditional internet and private networks travel over that cyber war attackers use. And a lot of that fiber optic is owned by Verizon and one or two other companies, AT&T, and a few other long distance carriers. And it's for that reason that we get to see the actual bits on the wire as they travel around the world and give us sort of an advanced warning system for cyber warfare. And that's what allows us to protect and be a partner with Homeland Security and with large companies that do business with us, so that we can take advantage of that advanced protection, that advanced notice, if you will, as the attacks are occurring, the denial of service attacks or malware attacks, and to create patterns and to understand the patterns. Those patterns, let's talk about the patterns and what we see in the research, and then we'll talk about if it applies to everyone here. The patterns really revolve around three motivations. One is espionage, the second is sabotage, and the third is fraud. Espionage, usually oriented from state-sponsored, as we said, Russian and North Korean, Iranian, and other state-sponsored agencies, government agencies. They're funded by the governments, and they are looking to not necessarily steal anything, but to get in and to spy, get in and stay in. That's not ransomware, but that's one of the first types of patterns that we're able to see. Sabotage is disruption. Sabotage is the act of disrupting either parts of the business or an entire entity, a government, a company. In some cases, it's linked with blackmailing. And again, it's not directly ransomware, but it's the beginning of ransomware, where if you want to create a ransom situation, you need the threat of disruption to go with it. And then lastly, of course, ransomware itself, the fraud, the act of fraud, where attackers are aiming at financial profit, either through credit card data and theft or through locking up data in order to profit. Okay, I think everyone gets that. And so we publish what's called the data breach investigations report. This is a free report. In this presentation that Sarah will send you, there's a link here. This is a hot link, a web link. You can click on this and get a copy of the report. In that report, you'll see that there are, over here on the left, indicators of frequency, patterns, who are the actors, so the who question, who's doing it, are they internal, are they external, what's motivating them, as we just said, is it financial? Yes, you can see a lot of it is financial. So this is, I'm showing you some of the data from our last report in 2021. What type of data was compromised? Was it personal? Was it bank data? And then what are the things that as an industry, we believe we need to do better? Security awareness and skills, or more secure configuration, or access controls and credential controls, et cetera. And so we look at thousands of both breaches and incidents. Breaches are an attempt to do harm. An incident is when doing harm is actually caught in the act. And we'll talk about what we see there. But this is hard research. It's quantitative and qualitative research that if you're asked at your company, or if you're interested in just for yourself, what are the facts? Here's some hard facts. And so for 2021, you can see, looking at 5,000, and this is just a subset of the population that Verizon looked at, but I think this is interesting to see what kinds of attacks, what kinds of breaches were begun last year. And we talk about social engineering, web applications, which the attackers like to go after based on URLs, system intrusions where they can steal credentials and just get into a system. It could be maybe not related to bad actors. Maybe it's miscellaneous errors or privileged misuse, which is someone who is authorized by you as an employee or a partner to, in just the normal course, have access to your data, but is misusing that access, or lost or stolen, et cetera. And you can see social engineering in terms of breaches, how they get in, is by far the leading approach for a breach. Once a system is breached, then the question is, how is the harm caused and what type of harm was caused? And so with social engineering, basic web applications on the left, what you see is denial of service, and again, basic web application attacks, and you would expect those would match. But you see that system intrusion slips down in terms of the incidents themselves. And again, it's an interesting way of just differentiating between a breach and an incident. What's interesting also, if we said how much of this is automated versus the human element, and how important is phishing? We'll talk for a moment about phishing. Everyone's heard of that expression, or spear phishing. 85% of breaches involve humans, the human element, which is either a human involved in social engineering a relationship with you or me or somebody in the government or in a company, but there are humans in the loop, versus no humans in the loop. It's simply a computer program trying to attack another computer program. So the fact that the human is in the loop, is in the kill chain, is a good and a bad thing. It's a good thing because we know how to change behavior of humans, and the psychology of humans plays a very important role in preventing ransomware and cyberware attacks. And it's more than simply out programming and out innovating in terms of technology. There's actual human psychology involved. And so let's look at social engineering. And so over the last couple of years, the idea of, and you see the definition at the top, the use of deception to manipulate individuals into divulging confidential or personal information. That's social engineering. That's what that means. It's the trust game. You can see I've written that at the top of the slide here, where what the attacker wants you to believe is that we know each other, or you think we know each other, or we're getting to know each other, or we're acquaintances, or one way or the other over time. This doesn't happen, as we all know, overnight, but over a series of interactions that could take days or weeks or months or even years, we start to believe that we are best friends and we would do anything for each other. And by combining and recombining information that we've discerned over the last month or several months or a year, the attacker understands what they need to do to get in. The reality is that online you have really no idea who the attacker is, or that what I'm saying is true, and little interest or patience to investigate it because we're all very busy. And so there you have the social engineering game. It's the most, going backwards here, social engineering continues to be the biggest approach, the most used approach for how do I create a ransomware event. And it's not only for the assets on premise or at your company or for your location. We're also now talking about cloud assets. While you can see the writing on the left, there's a decline in user devices in terms of desktops and laptops. You know, we've improved over the years our protection of desktops and laptops, but now the attack threat vector is the cloud. And we're starting to see more cloud assets and data stored in the cloud, which is, you know, iCloud or iDrive or AWS or Google Cloud or Oracle or Salesforce. And all of that data is what's getting attacked. And what very few users understand is a quote unquote shared responsibility model between you and the cloud provider. And they are only responsible, they have limited liability and are only responsible for part of that infrastructure and are not responsible necessarily for the security of your data. You are responsible for that. And that's usually not clear. And I would ask each of you to go back and better understand the relationship between you and your cloud providers to just simply clarify who owns what responsibility and who's accountable for what when it comes to the data and the programs that are running in the cloud. So a couple more minutes on ransomware, and then let's go to Q&A. So ransomware is on the uprise. We know a lot of it has to do with the fact that we are more users are working from home than ever before. And this shift to a distributed workforce is allowing ransomware attacks to occur not simply on enterprise premise or on company sites, but on your computers at home and across the line where you're using the same computer for work as you are at home. And the attacks are coming on the private side of your computer, and they're getting into the company side of your computer because of mistakes that we make in our private homes. So we need to secure both sets of data, the private and the public data that's stored in your home. Let's talk about for a minute how they work. This is called the cyber kill chain. If you haven't heard of that expression, it's a popular expression that describes the fact that cyber attacks are not one event. They are a series of steps that are performed over days and weeks, sometimes months, in order to prepare to create a ransomware event. They start with reconnaissance, where they don't actually do any harm or steal anything. They simply are trying to scan the environment, looking for information, looking for ways to get in, much like your home in the neighborhood, where it's a simple drive-by, and they're looking for the easiest targets. Then it's weaponization. How do they pair malicious code with an exploit to create a weapon, a piece of malware that can then be introduced via email or a web application? And again, nothing's happened yet, but they are weaponizing code which can be controlled remotely once it is delivered. Third is the delivery. And so we're trying to prevent reconnaissance and indication and visibility of reconnaissance. Number two, weaponization. There's not much we can do there other than to know that there are weaponized vulnerabilities out there, and we can track those. And of course, delivery, where we can make our PCs protected and prevent the delivery, the transmission of the malware into our PC, into our mobile phone. Eventually, there's the exploitation step once it's delivered, and the installation of, we'll call it the weapon or the malware itself, the command and control, which is when they take control of your system and start to lock up your files, and then the action on the objective, which is to get profit and inform you that your files are locked up unless you pay the ransom. So I just want you to I want everyone to understand sort of these steps, and that the protection needs to be on each of these steps. It's not simply just install, anti-malware and you're done. Think of it as a set of steps, and we've got a chance to prevent it. Phishing. So we've all seen examples of phishing and spear phishing, where there are emails that are sent that are not addressed directly to you. Here's an example from Wells Fargo. Dear valued Wells Fargo member, it doesn't say your name. Or number two, there aren't any personal tells or identifying markers in the email that it really is intended for you. And if you go on the internet, there's lots of examples of phishing and spear phishing attacks. And the only point is, if you see something like this, obviously delete it and don't click on it. If it's on your mobile phone, wait till you get home, and just trust your instincts about if it's not somebody double check before you click on it. Okay, especially on your cell phone. Could be tax season from the IRS. Okay, so who's watching all of this? If you're not familiar with the FBI and what they're doing to prevent ransomware, these are clickable links that I've placed in here that take you to the FBI ransomware, what you can do to prevent ransomware site. The FBI has an entire department focused on ransomware that's doing good work. The cyber security, I am going to click on this link. Tell me if you can see this this website. This is the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency. Again, part of the Department of Homeland Security, but there's good work going on there. And then Mitre. Mitre is an organization that tracks different types of vulnerabilities. And I wanted to include these so that when we're done today, you have somewhere to go that you can get more information on what the known vulnerabilities and how to prevent ransomware. Here's the common vulnerabilities database. So we're tracking these in real time, and if there's any question about how to prevent malware from being introduced, there are specific steps you can take that are listed here in this database. And of course, Krebs on Security and Security Week are good resources. Conti, this is just from this last week. Conti is a type of ransomware a group that was in the news last night, I mentioned earlier. It's almost too much to try and keep track of all of the activity on ransomware, but If these are free subscriptions, and if you are interested to at least stay aware, I would suggest subscribing. Same thing with Gartner Group. Real quickly on whether it applies to agriculture and the food supply chain, it absolutely does. Ransomware. Here is a notice from September of last year from the FBI warning farms, processors, manufacturers, markets, and restaurants about ransomware attacks and what to do about it. And these are specific attacks by foreign state governments and other private ransomware attackers, specifically targeting farming cooperatives and unlikely farm producers with regard to ransomware. That it just to make the point, it absolutely applies not simply to financial services and healthcare and retail. So, you know, keep your eyes on ransomware events that are occurring in, you know, in the agricultural industry. And then I guess to finish, to come back around to what I can do about it, there are ransomware readiness assessments that you can take. These are links, again, to self-guided readiness assessment tools. If you want to know if you're ready, if ransomware event does occur, are you ready? And what can you do to improve your readiness? There are assessments. There are also simulations from private industry. We have a simulation team, ransomware simulation team, where we can help test the security before the attacker does. You might consider that does cost money, but I think when it's a likely event, a ransomware event, it might be something to get in front of. Yeah, so in the end, back up your data. I would say again, just to conclude, that's the one big thing you can do, and just be really careful about clicking on links on your mobile phone. Let me stop there, Sarah. I'm showing it's about 42 past. Let's open it up for questions. I hope that was good surveying. Thank you.
That is perfect. Do we have any questions right now? Either type it in the chat box, or if you'd like to speak up. Okay, we have a question from Laura to everyone. It says, are password programs good? Yes,
they're good as long as they themselves are protected. And there are good password. Was that the question, Sarah? Password protection programs?
Yes.
Let me make sure I heard it. You mean software programs? I assume that's what you meant. Tracking your passwords?
Does that sound correct, Laura? Yes. Yes. So yes, that sounds correct.
I mean, they can help. Some people believe that they're not good because they become targets themselves, the password protection program. But one of the things that they do well is they encrypt your passwords on your computer. And so just by definition, if the data is already encrypted, it makes it less likely to be monetized. It still doesn't really help your computer from a ransomware attack itself, where that data, that program, and your entire computer is encrypted with a different encryption key, so you can't even get access to your passwords, which makes the point again of, if you're going to store your passwords, store them on a drive that's off-site or not connected to your PC, so that it's almost like you're planning for a fire. You know, that would be the example where your PC is completely lost. What would you do? So that's what you want to think about. How do you restore your computer where the computer has been burned up? That's the way to think about ransomware. Other questions?
Do we have any other questions? Jack, I have a question. So if
yes,
one of our, say someone has a ransomware attack occur, do you have any insight to what they should do first? What should be their we talked about prevention, but what should they do thereafter?
It's a controversial question because some people say, and it depends, but some people say pay the ransom and get your data back. Other people say never pay the ransom and just be prepared to start over. In both cases, you really need a backup. So the first step should be to assess the seriousness of it, contact the FBI if it is serious, because you may not be alone. There may be known ways to unencrypt or decrypt the ransomware attack. You'll need a computer to do that, obviously, a backup computer, preferably, or I mean, I guess you could do it from your mobile phone to contact the FBI. If it's a company computer, obviously contacting your company and making sure they're aware, because they have a means to decide what to do and to assess whether the data that's been stolen is critical or not. If it's just you personally, again, it's something like your phone being lost or stolen. If you've done a good job backing up your system and you are pretty sure that your data has been encrypted, then it's a lot easier to move forward knowing you can start over and rebuild. It's very inconvenient, but the first thing to do is to just assess, should I pay the ransom or can I go forward without paying it? If you do decide to pay the ransom, just make sure that that you know that you're receiving the decryption key and that the ransom is going to be paid concurrent with the decryption key. Don't pay the ransom and then you never get the decryption key. So usually if you can go online, if you have a way to go online, there are others. It's rare that you're alone. There are others that can tell you a little background on what they've done on social media for that particular attack.
So Jack, we have another question from Casey. She said, could large cloud providers like AWS be faced with ransomware attacks, especially in light of the Russia information, and what could happen?
Yes, they are, and I know people at AWS who tell me they are attacked or attempt to be breached every day of the year. They're being attacked right now as we're speaking. And what could happen depends on whose data that they're storing and processing. The worst case is that the ransomware could be applied to one specific data at rest or S3 bucket within AWS that only applies to one individual. And then it would be your responsibility, not AWS's responsibility, for what happens, because they're not responsible for the data that's living in a storage container or an S3 bucket. But if it is applied to an AWS-wide region or availability zone, then obviously AWS has a cybersecurity team that would be, and they back up their data and, you know, do a great job backing up their data and their systems. And you can be assured that, you know, AWS would recover from that. And so they're less of a likely threat. But it's possible. The example with Microsoft was SolarWinds, where the Office 365 and the Microsoft Azure environment had introduced SolarWinds into their environment, and that was a system-wide event, and that was a very serious event, which some people believe is still going on. So, but in general, it's something you should ask AWS. There are AWS forums. If you want, I can get you more information on where to ask. Whose responsibility is it, yours or AWS? Well, that's great. Other questions?
Sorry,
well,
Jack.
I appreciate
Jack,
okay.
Sorry, I actually forgot to unmute. We have a question from Barbara. She says, I'm a rookie. Should I get a VPN for my tablet for a trip to Europe? How does VPN work, and does a VPN work on a cell phone?
VPN is a virtual private network, which is a private connection as opposed to a public internet connection that is given to you and your IP address so that you are not, your data and if you will, your session as you're traveling is not traversing the public internet, but rather over a private network. And that is that's a good thing, and it's a level of privacy and protection that ensures that your data is encrypted over that private link. It's what large companies use every day. Verizon offers private network. If you can afford it, I would say yes, look into it while you're traveling. And there are personal VPN programs that will charge you by for a length of time or for a given connection or for a given location. And yes, I would recommend it. It's not foolproof if an attacker gets access to your VPN credentials. So you still have to protect your credentials. And it's still possible. You still need to back up your data and all of those things. But a virtual private connection is better than a public connection in terms of their ability to look at data because it's encrypted. I hope that helps.
So we have a few more questions, Jack.
Sure.
The first question we have is, what is your take on Lookout for a cell phone?
It's better than nothing, not to be facetious, but we've used it at Verizon. Lookout is a good multi-factor authentication and antivirus and anti-malware and endpoint detection and response program. Is it good for your cell phone? If you don't mind it running and keeping track of the data that's on your cell phone, I would say it's a good thing. Having some kind of anti-malware and multi-factor authentication client running on your cell phone is a good thing. It's usually required on company-owned phones.
And then our last question is, it says, could Jack give an example of how you would go about getting the key to to decrypt your data and payment to the intruder at the same time as mentioned?
There are third parties. I can give you the names of some who specialize in this, where you can think of it like a broker, where you're actually not negotiating with the ransomware attacker yourself, but rather something like a lawyer or someone who is experienced in that exchange of money for a decryption key, and the key is deposited in a let's call it a third-party storage location, and then you're allowed to access that location once the money is deposited in a third party. You can think of it something like PayPal, where the money is deposited but it hasn't been retrieved yet. And so a third party ransomware broker is the best example I can give, and I can give you the names of some.
Okay. Well, thank you, Jack, so much for all of your knowledge and your resources. I will be sure to share them with the folks that are on here and the folks that registered. We will also have this video posted to YouTube as well. And I will let you know once that has rendered and been posted. Jack, at this time, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen.
Sure. Thank you all very much. And I hope this was a good survey of the current cybersecurity threat landscape and the topic of ransomware. So thanks again, Sarah.
Thank you so much for joining us. It was definitely a pleasure. I enjoyed hearing all that you had to say. I'm sure that the folks on here as well learned a lot. So I just have 3 more slides to share with you from the MAB. Just a reminder, if you are not a student with us, or if you are a current student with us and you would like to take some time to share your perspective or visit with Deborah Cole, our managing director, you can find the link on our webpage where it says schedule an advising appointment. It takes you straight to her calendar. We love to get to know our students and prospective students so we can help you as you further your education. We have 2 webinars scheduled for April. April 12th, we have our information webinar for prospective students. Again, if you're thinking about joining the program, or if you know someone who'd be a great fit, please direct them to our information webinar on April 12th. And then on April 26th, we will be visiting with Dr. Alex Shinoyan and Mr. Paul Cassidy about our individual course offerings. We do offer individual courses that can be taken as standalone courses. So we will be visiting with them. And then lastly, please connect with us on social media. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, or connect with us on our webpage. And again, like I said, feel free to find us on YouTube as well. We have some great videos out there on YouTube, as well as some other webinars that we have hosted with other individuals, subject matter experts in their own fields that are all connected to agribusiness. We thank you very, very much today for joining us. And if you have any questions or would like to connect with us, feel free to reach out. Have a wonderful rest of your day.